Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another PSA graded informational video pertaining to Magic the Gathering cards, PSA graded cards, and the variations on the different cases and flips that they use to kind of certify the cards, authenticate the cards with. If you've ever wondered why some of the cases, look subtly different, it's because they've sort of updated their techniques over the years to kind of stay ahead of intellectual property and also security. Like one of the ways to make sure that their products are safe is to sort of update their cases, adding some extra security features to the labels to make it harder to counterfeit some of their products. So we're going to look at some of that today. We're going to use the Arabian Nights cards that we looked at the past couple of days in our Arabian Nights PSA graded set. There is also a really good resource that I can recommend. It is an article by All Vintage Cards that I will put a link in the description below, and that'll kind of give you the vast history and evolution of the PSA card holders and flips is what they call this little label the flip. If you open up these cases, it's essentially two pieces that are like flipped together and taped in that label, in that orientation. So they sort of technically flip them together and put them in the case when they grade the card. But this article is really helpful. I've referred to it several times when I've been looking at graded Magic cards and sports cards as well. It covers the history of professional sports authenticators, which started in the early 90s, around 91. I believe the Wayne Gretzky Honus Wagner was the very first card that they graded, and the certification number on that card was 000000001, and it was graded a PSA near mint 8 copy, I believe, of that Honus Wagner. And so Gretzky bought it and sold it for like $1 million, and now it's worth probably 8 million, 20 million, I don't know, a lot. But that was originally encased in the very first type of case that they had, and then over the years they've improved their technology, improved their efficiency, improved their quality, and are up to this, and made several changes. I think it's about 10 different variations according to this article, and from what I can tell. It started, like I said, in 1991, and so that's almost 30 years later. Yeah, or almost 30 years. They've been in business for almost 30 years. So this article explains that over the years, PSA has made various changes to the labels on its PSA holders. They call them flips, and the actual plastic slabs have also seen some changes. Variations are not as noticeable as others, but it's important to know the difference when buying graded cards. This guide was designed as a resource for collectors to help distinguish the different PSA labels and slabs, to help identify them and identify some fake holders and labels that do exist. I haven't seen any fake PSA slabs, but they do exist and can usually be spotted if you know some of the telltale signs. We hope this guide on PSA holders is a useful resource. In future posts, we also plan to examine the history of both Beckett and SGC graded holders as well. So if you're interested in either of those companies too, check the link to this article and see if they've updated the history of the other grading companies. There are several comments on this post on the link so that you can read collectors' responses and questions. So the very first flip was from 1991 to 1992. I believe I have a picture of it. Yeah, so the very first holder ever was issued by PSA. Was most notably the first ever card graded was cert 000000001, and it was the Gretzky T206 Honus Wagner card, which I think was trimmed, and then it was either trimmed or altered So there's another article, you can link to that and read about the Honus Wagner card. The initial PSA holders were only issued for 2 years, and if you have a familiarity with PSA labels, they look quite different. First, the font on the flips or labels is completely different from the font used later labels. Also, the zeros have a distinct line, and the serial number barcode is much longer compared to the other versions. So that's gonna look like this. Ronnie Lott card here is one of the original flips from the early 90s. You can see the barcode is really long. Their corners are kind of rounded on the white part of the label, and then the font is just like a really old inkjet printer looking font. I will point out that Magic cards were not printed until 1993, so it's very unlikely that you'll ever encounter a Magic card that was graded by PSA between 1991 and 92 because there weren't any cards that would have been encapsulated during that time. I don't really think Magic cards were being graded until the late 90s, if not early 2000s. So I don't have any examples of the first 5 flips, but I do have the differences of the last 5 from 6 to 10. I have those because I've been grading PSA cards and Magic cards for the last 15 years, 20 years maybe. So I can point out the differences between those cases. So that's the very first flip. They also had a hologram sticker on the back of the label. The label was a bright blue that said Professional Sports Authenticator, and it had a hologram logo on that label. Then they went to a smaller font, a smaller barcode, and put a PSA stamp on the flip. So that's the second version. I believe that case looks kind of like this. They have a smaller barcode, still the rounded white part with the red border, nothing else on the label. So these holders were issued from 1992 to 1999. This is a Nolan Ryan Topps card in that holder. I think I've only seen 1 or 2 Magic cards that have been graded in like a holder like this. They were probably graded in like 1999 by maybe a sports collector that thought they were valuable. I think it was a Ancestral Recall actually that had this kind of weird looking label to it, and it was on eBay and nobody wanted it because they were like, oh, it's a fake label, or somebody bought an old case, printed their own label maybe, and put an Ancestral Recall from Alpha into a PSA holder and trying to sell it. But it is possible, doing the history, that a 1993 Alpha Ancestral Recall could have been graded by PSA in 1999 if the collector thought it was valuable and wanted to go for graded cards. It would look like that. The rear of the PSA flip is mostly the same. It still has this PSA hologram on it. The third type of flip that they came out with had a new hologram on the rear of the flip. The third holder issued by PSA had a similar font label but minor change to the rear of the flip. Most significant change on the back slab is a hologram flip. And I don't have any Arabian Nights, or I don't think I even have any sports cards that have the hologram on the back. In the third generation, they switched to this Collector's Universe sticker, which is their company that they're traded under. So they went from a PSA hologram to a Collector's Universe hologram. Then the fourth flip that they did, they changed the font, they aligned the barcode to the left, and they made no changes to the back. So the fourth version looks like this. It was issued for an unknown period in the early 2000s. They pushed everything to the left. They went with a smaller, more defined font so you could see the card names and the certification numbers. And then in the fifth version, they changed the fonts again and changed the rear of the label. So the fonts on the Type 5 flip are reverted back to the style on type 2 and type 3. They also, the white container on the label is changed to square corners. On other noticeable changes is the PSA lettering on the red top of the flip is actually a tougher to find holder. So this is, just before this version is when they went with these square shaped labels. And that brings us to flip number 6, where they changed the rear label by taking off the hologram, and they put a little metallic stamp that says a division of Collectors Universe, NASDAQ, CLCT is their NASDAQ kind of stock trading name. The font and the borders are identical to number 5. So that's where we sort of started collecting Magic cards. That's number 6. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So these are the current, most recent PSA holders that we have Magic the Gathering cards in, and I'll show you the difference of those in this video. So this is number 6, generation 6 on the PSA holders. As you can see, they went with square borders. This is number 7. And the major difference between number 6 and number 7 is that they moved the grade down to its own line on the label. So this is a mint 9 if biff Afrit, and you can see it says mint 9 on the same line. And then this is a mint 9 Ring of Maruf, and they moved the number 9 down a line. So this would have been graded, I would say, probably in the early to mid 2000s, and then this would be graded in like the 2010 to 2013 era of PSA. So this is 6 and 7. Major difference is that the grade number will be on the same line or the different line. And if you turn those over, they use a similar flip, but the colors are different. So number 6 has a blue flip, like a bright blue flip, and then Series 7 has a dark blue flip on the back. So now we'll take a look at the difference between 7 and 8. So from the front, you can see that flip number 7 and number 8, they keep the grade number on its own line, but they've added a little hologram to the front of the label. So that's the major difference between 6 and 7. The backs are identical. Professional Sports Authenticator, PSA, Division of Collectors Universe, NASDAQ, CLCT. So the navy blue flips on the back are the same. The only difference is that they've added this little PSA hologram to the front. Then from number, they also updated the cases. I don't know if you'll be able to see from this video, but the Series 8 cases are more of a clamshell, where you have a larger outer slab and then a thinner inner slab in the back, and they're kind of sandwiched together. The technology that they use to seal these is called sonic welding. The other cases were just 2 pieces of plastic that were put together and then sonically welded. So these were able to be pried apart with like a screwdriver and some tools. You just pop it in there and crack them open. But when you separate the cases, they kind of shatter inside. So there's no glue, but they shatter, and it's tamper-proof, so you can tell if they've been opened. And from my experience, it's really impossible to sort of separate them without damaging the cases, and it's impossible to put them back together with glue. And if you look at them under a microscope, you can see if they've been tampered with, and then you know they're not authentic. So 6 and 7 were these old like sandwich cases, and then 7, 8, and 9 to the current grades all have these clamshell cases similar to Beckett BGS. That's kind of like a Beckett BGS construction. but they will also have a little PSA kind of logo on the front of the case and the back of the case. So if someone were to like 3D print these at home, they'd have to figure out how to print the PSA logo on the case, but they're not really able to do that because PSA has the intellectual property and the patent to do that. So again, 6, 7, 8, the difference between 7 and 8 is the hologram on the front, and the back of the flip is the same. Now we go to 8 and 9. We have this is a Mint 9 Moorish Cavalry, graded PSA 9. We also have a Mint 9 Library of Alexandria. These both have the holograms on the front. So the front labels are identical. The difference between these two is the backs. They added a barcode and the certification number, 2299. So you can see that matches with the front label 2299, so that you can authenticate that that is a Mint 9 Library of Alexandria. The other feature on PSA's website is they have a certification number verification, and you look up a cert, you put in these 8 numbers, it'll tell you that that certification was a 1993 Magic the Gathering Library of Alexandria card. It was graded in a traditional holder and given a grade of Mint 9. So that is another way to just verify that the item that you are acquiring or collecting has been authenticated by PSA. These have the same holders, the clamshell kind of sandwich holders. They're thicker, they're a little more sturdier than the first 2 flips here. And the barcode cert number on the back is the major difference between these 2 cards. And then the last series, the last kind of generation is the current one that they're using currently. They updated the hologram on the front. So this is a Mint 9 Library of Alexandria with the kind of foily hologram. And then this is a near mint to Mint 8 Juzam de Jin, which has a much bigger kind of, they call it a lighthouse reflective PSA hologram with some refractor in it. And so those are different on the flips. And on the back, they added a QR code. So they still have the barcode, they still have the certification number, they have a PSA hologram in the middle that's gonna be hard to replicate and print yourself. And they changed the Professional Sports Authenticator and Division of Collectors Universe to a PSA kind of foil stamp here and the QR code. So the cases again are the same, these kind of thicker clamshell slabs, but the back labels on the flips are going to be different. So that is my PSA informational video on the evolution of PSA cases and flips. If you've ever been curious to know why the flips have changed over years or what makes them different, I would say if you're buying graded cards and you notice differences in the flips, it does help kind of give some provenance and authenticity to the cards, because you can tell when they were graded. If the flip and the case kind of match, then you can verify that maybe this card was graded 10 to 15 years ago. And if the flip and the case match, you can tell that this card was maybe graded more recently in the last couple years. And if there's any differences, like if someone tries to put an old flip inside some kind of new case and they don't match historically, then you know there's some questions and red flags, and you'd want to like return those to the seller and just not buy those cards. So always double check that your PSA graded cards are historically accurate, I would call that, and that there are no imperfections or any signs of tampering. The cases are really sturdy, and PSA has put a lot of money and resources in sort of refining their technology for security and safety. So Buy with confidence with PSA. When in doubt, you can always check the certification number on their look up the cert function and verify that it was authenticated by PSA and that the item matches the card in the holder. They also do that for like baseballs, signed items, and other memorabilia. You can look up the certification number and it'll tell you what exactly the item is. And if there's any question, you can just contact PSA and they can verify that the item is authentic or not. Then you can have peace of mind with your purchase and your collecting. So if you like this video, please subscribe. We can do a little more content like this going forward, kind of covering the differences in grading, maybe the different companies and techniques. If you really like this video, please give it a thumbs up too, and maybe like add any comments down below that you might want to add about your observations with PSA graded cards or the different flips and cases that you've encountered. Again, this is a great hobby. I encourage anyone that's interested in PSA to check out their website and get involved with the graded collections. And wish everyone luck in their hobby, their collection, their pursuits. Collect what you love, and we will catch you in another video. Thanks everyone for watching. Have a great day.